Hi there, Malcolm here with my first ever BookTube vlog, and today we start off reading all of my Star Wars Jedi Apprentice books. I have 18 in the collection plus a special edition, starting off with The Rising Force. Now, the Jedi Apprentice series follows 12-year-old Obi-Wan Kenobi as he eagerly awaits being assigned to a master. However, the threat of being sent to the Agricor to be a Jedi farmer instead is very real. And these books basically follow some of his early adventures. Now, I have read most of these before, but there was a few I didn't have and so had to skip them. So it'd be really good to do a quick reread through and then fill in the missing gaps. And like with reading vlogs, I'll do a quick update for each book as and when I finished it, just so I keep it fresh in my mind, and then stitch it all together to make one nice big video. But not too big, I hope. Right, so I've finished the first one, The Rising Force. So we've introduced a very angry 12-year-old Obi-Wan Kenobi, who is desperately trying to prove his worth as a potential Jedi. He's not been taken on as an apprentice yet, and basically it's the last chance. If he doesn't get it, he's going off to the Agricor. And Qui-Gon is going to come and watch him spar with his lightsaber. Unfortunately, sparring part is Jedi training Bruck, who is a complete arse and keeps pushing all of Obi-Wan's buttons, causing him to lose his rag quite regularly. One of my issues with this was that how could such a complete arse be allowed to continue training to be a Jedi, because he's clearly self-involved. And even at 12 years old, it's quite clear that Bruck is not going to be a good Jedi. Anyway, Obi-Wan is sent to an agricultural planet, and on the ship that he's got passage on also happens to be Qui-Gon Jinn, who's also going to the same planet, but for completely unrelated reasons. However, before they even get there, there's a bit of a crisis on the ship because there are two mining factions, one of which is headed by the Hutts, and one side is up to no good. Now, there could be some sort of weird double bluff, but no, it is the Hutts behind it. And Qui-Gon Jinn is adamant he's not going to take on Obi-Wan as his apprentice. Turns out he had a previous apprentice called Xanatos, who was an epic failure, and so is reluctant to take on another one. And so Obi-Wan takes it upon himself to try and resolve the issues between the two warring factions, only for his youth and inexperience to hinder more than help his adventures. So not a bad little story here. There's a certain element of will they, won't they, in terms of Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan being a master and apprentice. And of course we know that from the films, but Obi-Wan certainly doesn't know this at this point, and Qui-Gon doesn't feel he's ready to go down that road again. And Obi-Wan befriends an Arconan are roughly the same age as him, and they become fast friends. And it's really nice to find out a little bit more about the Arconan physiology, because they don't really feature in the films or books at all. It's the first thing you see when you go into the canteen at Mos Eisley, but beyond that, they haven't really had much input in the Star Wars universe. So it was great finding out a little bit more about that species. And they also had thrown in a few big Star Wars creatures, because it's not proper Star Wars unless there's some big creature that can eat you. And so that was a nice little touch as well. So yeah, I was actually quite impressed with this one. It was a reread. I didn't really remember much of it. And the book sets up a little bit of the story arc for Xanatos, who's going to come back and cause a bit of grief, but not at the expense of the story. We don't spend a huge amount of time setting up Xanatos. There's a few throwaway lines and the epilogue, effectively, which feels more like an after-credit scene, to be honest, which was nice. So yeah, worth buying. It's the Dark Rival is next. Well, I've just finished book 2, The Dark Rival. So Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn have now reached the planet they were heading for, the planet Bandamir, where failed Jedi Padawan Obi-Wan Kenobi has been sent to work for the Agricor, basically using his force powers to help plants grow. And Qui-Gon Jinn has coincidentally been sent to the same planet on a mission, only to have been greeted with a note from his previous wayward Padawan Xanatos. And so book 2, we have two rival mining companies, very much a continuation of book 1 in that regard, including some carryover characters as well, where we quickly learn that the rival mining company to the one where the Jedi allied themselves with in the first book is headed by Xanatos, and is clearly bad news. And before long, Obi-Wan Kenobi, along with a friend he made in the first book, trying to find proof that Xanatos' mining company have been sabotaging the one that they are sort of allied with, only to get kidnapped. Yeah, so it's a nice continuation of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn's adventures. This one continues the will they, won't they aspect of will Qui-Gon take Obi-Wan on to be his apprentice or not. A somewhat unnecessary story arc, seeing that we full well know that Obi-Wan becomes Qui-Gon Jinn's apprentice unless you've read these having not read the books, in which case I've just given away a big spoiler, which is resolved by the end of this book. And I suppose it's not the case of will they, won't they, but more why is Qui-Gon reluctant? I mean, obviously it's Senatus's betrayal, but there's more to it than that, and we actually get to learn more about the man behind the Jedi, as it were, which I really appreciated. And again, a really strong story in the series. This was written by Jude Watson, whereas the first one was done by Dave Wolverton. I'm not quite sure why. Dave only did the first book, and Jude seems to have done the rest. But it didn't feel like it's been written by a different author. I think it was all nicely planned out, and a very satisfying storyline. Worth buying. So book 3 is The Hidden Past, where the Jedi charter a flight to a neighbouring planet with a Findian friend that Obi-Wan made while he was imprisoned by Xanatus, only for them to crash land on a totally different planet, apparently, where actually there's been not so much of a plot, but a ruse to get the Jedi onto this planet to help the Findians out with their little plight. And it turns out that Obi-Wan's friend, so-called, was more of a political prisoner. Okay, he's a thief, but he's a thief for a reason, because his people are being oppressed by a criminal organisation, and they need the Jedi to help them resolve this. And the big threat hanging over the population are that those who are caught are taken mind-wiped and dumped on some random planet to fend for themselves, and generally don't last very long. And again, a really enjoyable story. The main thrust, I suppose, the bit where the mind wipe happens and the consequences on that take place quite late in the book, but I would say that what happens afterwards was a far too convenient sequence of events to have taken place. It kind of took me out a bit. It's like, really, you're there and you could do that because of this. Of all the planets and all the places you could have been dumped, you were there for that. And that sort of took me out a bit. But apart from that, really enjoyed it. This series is doing well so far. So next up is The Mark of the Crown, where following the events on The Hidden Past, the Jedi travelled to the neighbouring planet whose prince had been involved in the shenanigans in that book. And in this one, the dying queen has decided, rather than let this prince become the next official ruler of the planet, that there'll be official elections and the people get to vote democratically who their next leader is going to be. And of course the prince isn't too enthralled about the fact his birthright has been taken away from him, and we already don't like him from what he was up to in the previous book. However, it's a much deeper story than that. It's not just a case of the prince is a bad guy. He's a complicated character, like with most characters, and the Jedi are there to mediate this vote to ensure that everything stays above board. However, it becomes quickly apparent that the Queen's ailment is not natural, and she also has a few other secrets that can change the outcome of this vote completely. And in this one, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon deliberately separate, part ways to do two separate agendas, rather than one being kidnapped and mind-wiped and dumped on another planet sort of thing. So they both voluntarily go their own way to solve this problem from two different angles. So it was nice that the story is split up like that in a more natural way. And actually, I found the story was a lot deeper than I was expecting it to be, and the ending was very satisfactory. I would say this book concludes a 4-book arc, or sub-arc if you like, and that each sequential book had a reasonably loose link to the previous one, but the conclusion of this book, that is a definite end to this arc. Yeah, really good, worth buying. Book 6 is The Defenders of the Dead, and this is a completely new adventure. Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon have been back to the temple, they've rested a bit from their last lot, and they've been sent out on a new mission, so there's no real linkage to the previous story at all. And they travel to Melida, where another Jedi has been taken hostage, and their mission is to go and rescue her. And this planet has two separate tribes, the Melida and the Darn, who both, for hundreds of years, have been fighting each other, killing each other because of previous battles where people got killed, and neither side can really remember why they're fighting. They just do because of the hatred that they have for what has happened. And huge mausoleums have been erected to commemorate those who are dead, with holographic messages from these warriors before they go out to fight, basically reiterating their hatred of the opposing side and for the glory of protecting their kids, only to go and die, and then the kids are left to go and fight instead. It's a pretty hopeless situation until the Jedi fall in with the young, basically the children from both sides, who are fed up to the back teeth of this whole shenanigans and just want peace. And Obi-Wan is really moved with this. He's hanging out with people of his own age, which he doesn't get to do very often, and ultimately makes a tough choice about leaving the Jedi Order to stay on Mlod'Dan while Qui-Gon disappears back to Coruscant with the injured Jedi that they rescued to help fight and get peace for this planet. A really deep book, this one, and certainly look at the state of the world it's in at the moment. It just seems that hate begets hate begets hate, and it just continues in a cycle. Really, really good, worth buying. Book 6 is The Uncertain Path. So Obi-Wan is now on his own on Mlod'Dan, helping out the young to maintain a new government, having defeated the elders. And, of course, there's indecisions among even the young on how to go forward. Some want to destroy all the mausoleums to remove this reminder of hate, and others want to preserve them because that's all they have of their families. And meanwhile, people are cold and hungry and wanting the government to actually do what they need to do. And the elders are still not really acknowledging the fact that the children are in charge. And so Obi-Wan goes from one crisis to another, just completely out of his depth. Meanwhile, back at the Jedi Temple, Qui-Gon Jinn and the rescued Tal, who is much recuperated now, are in charge of investigating a series of thefts within the temple, only to discover a far more insidious plot is ongoing there. And of course, poor Qui-Gon is trying to get to grips with the fact that he has been betrayed by his apprentice again. First Xanatos, now Obi-Wan Kenobi. But at the same time, it's been pointed out by the various Jedi around him that, okay, your mission was to go and get Tal, but was it at the expense of everything else that was going on that planet? Did Qui-Gon do the right thing? So again, you get to see the man behind the Jedi, someone who is fallible, so someone who, despite his strength and wisdom, doesn't always get it right. But we also have a mystery on one side and a rapidly destabilising situation with a young inexperienced children on the other. A really good blend and a nice melding of the two towards the end. Worth buying. Right, so I finished the 7th book, The Captive Temple, and this one sees a confrontation with Xanatos back at the Jedi Temple. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn are trying to settle their differences after Obi-Wan's decision to leave the Jedi Order and subsequent desire to return to it. So they're back at the temple and Xanatos is running amok, causing all sorts of problems. I think it takes a little while for them to twig that it is Xanatos. It's some mysterious bad guy, but of course it's going to be Xanatos. He's been there before. He knows the layout and how everyone operates. Quite an exciting one, and it really does play on that whole broken relationship and the attempt to fix it, and is it worth fixing, can it be salvageable, what's going to happen. And again, because we know that they do end up as apprentice and master by the Phantom Menace, it's kind of a foregone conclusion, but it's fun seeing the journey. Booktastic. On to book 8. Yeah, so book 8 is the final reckoning, and it's the final confrontation between Xanatos and his former master, Qui-Gon Jinn, with Obi-Wan Kenobi tagging along, still in an attempt to repair the broken relationship from the events of Defenders of the Dead. And they track him down to a planet where he is very highly regarded. He's pretty much in charge of the place, and everything surrounds some gladiatorial type games, and they're betting upon them. So not only have they got to try and stop Xanatos, but they've got to do it in a way that's not going to cause some massive outcry from the population that adore him. Yeah, it takes some really interesting twists and turns. I'd say their encounter of the two people on the entire planet that can actually help them was perhaps a little bit coincidental and convenient, but apart from that, this one definitely ties up the first 8-book arc of the series. Really enjoyed the story. Booktastic. On to book 9. So yeah, I finished book 9, The Fight for Truth. And as I said, book 8 finished off that arc, so this is a brand new adventure, brand new mission. There's still the hang-ups from what Obi-Wan Kenobi did, and Qui-Gon, and what happened with Xanatos, but we're moving forward with life. And on this one, the Jedi are called to a planet because a couple have a potentially force-sensitive baby and they need the Jedi to come check it out. Unfortunately, the planet is very much a insular planet. And it really has sort of the hallmarkings of one of those communities that barricade themselves in the middle of nowhere and don't have anything to do with the rest of the world, except this time the whole planet's doing it. And it quickly transpires that this couple really shouldn't have reached out to the Jedi. This is a thing that is kept internal. And Obi-Wan Kenobi, along with Siri, a young Jedi girl of the same age, get, well, not so much kidnapped, but collected by a truant squad and sent off to school. Masters have instructed them not to cause any ruckus and any problems, so they're keeping their Jedi identity at bay. And they quickly learn there that all the children are very quickly indoctrinated into this insular society by being force-fed lies about how corrupt and evil the Galactic Republic is and how everyone's fending from themselves. there's no freedoms, and that everything you could possibly want is on this planet Qui-Gon, where you are free, effectively. Except, of course, no one is, and being fed a pile of lies, and they've got to work out why. Meanwhile, Qui-Gon Jinn and Adi Gallia, series master, are investigating the disappearance of this baby, which they've never seen, as well as their missing Padawans. Although I think it's still, Obi-Wan is not officially Qui-Gon's Padawan at this point, but they're still hanging out just to see how things go. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one. It really felt like one of those 90s, early 2000s sci-fi episodic shows like Stargate SG-1 or one of the Star Treks, or Andromeda, Farscape, yeah, any one of those sort of things where, you know, our heroes turn up on a planet and it really does take an outside influence to shine a mirror up to the population of what's going on and how they've been lied to. However, the twist at the end is really interesting that, yes, they've been lied to, but the leadership have done so for what they perceive to be a very valid reason. She happens to be Force sensitive herself and has a premonition about the fact that the Jedi are responsible for the downfall of the Republic, which is sort of true, really. The result of which will mean that the new Empire will come and pretty much wipe out Qui-Gon. And after a quick check on Wikipedia, it turns out that the Empire had nothing to do with Qui-Gon, but apparently Qui-Gon is captured by the Yuzang Vong. So read into that what you will. Yeah, absolutely love this one. Booktastic. On to book 10. So for the next standalone adventure, Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan travel to a twin planet where the royal firstborn grows up on the alternate planet. Basically, these two planets have been at war forever, and in a way to try and avoid this, they do this thing so that, A, the firstborn is kind of like the hostage of the other planet, but more than that, they get to grow up on the enemy's side, as it were, and seeing their point of view. So when they come back to their home planet, when they reach age, they're, in theory, more understanding of how things go on the other planet. Unfortunately, the Crown Prince of one planet has reached age, but doesn't want to go home. His home is this other planet. He's lived his entire life there. Why does he want to go elsewhere? And so the Jedi have to mediate this situation, because otherwise there's going to be war, because both kings are blaming the other one for lying, as they got to try and track down this prince, find out what's really going on, and there's other stuff that happens as well. Some fun twists and turns, and a solid little story. Booktastic. On to book 11. Book 12 is The Deadly Hunter, and it's the start of a new story arc. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn return home after the last mission. Instead of going to the Jedi Temple, they stop off at a diner to meet one of Qui-Gon's friends. It's not Dex from Attack of the Clones, this is another one. And turns out this guy is in a spot of bother. There's the bounty hunter on his case. On the side, he does a bit of information brokering, and something that's crossed his desk is a bit sensitive. And this lethal lady is trying to track him down. And so the two Jedi take it upon themselves to try and protect him. And in doing so, they find out that there's a deeper web of intrigue than just that. There's a whole conspiracy going on, a whole bunch of things happening, and it leaves on a rather massive cliffhanger, with Qui-Gon in the clutches of this bounty hunter. Yeah, really enjoyed this, really exciting. I like a good police procedural style story, and this one certainly felt like that, as the two Jedi track down sources, uncover information, and then have to go back to ask earlier sources new questions, having learnt things subsequently. Really played out really nicely, worth reading. On to book 12. And on to book 12. Yeah, so book 12 of The Evil Experiment. This is a first time read for me, and so you can imagine my frustration last time round from book 11. I ended up on that cliffhanger and had no means of knowing what happened next. And now I do. So as you can see, Qui-Gon is in the clutches of some evil person doing experimentation on him, as one of the characters from the previous story shows their true colours, leaving Obi-Wan Kenobi to continue his investigations to now try and find out A, who's bankrolling this bounty hunter, and B, where his master's ended up. And he's joined by the daughter of the canteen owner from the previous book, because her dad has been poisoned by this bounty hunter, and there's only one means of help. Brilliant stuff, really exciting, worth reading. 13, The Dangerous Rescue, directly follows on from The Evil Experiment, and this one's the last of my rereads, so I had to read this one not knowing what happened with Evil Experiment, so it's nice having that closure. Anyway, onto this one. Qui-Gon's been rescued, but But there's another Jedi who is still in the clutches of the evil mastermind of the last 2 books, and they've also got the welfare of an entire planet at their mercy. And so our Jedi team up again with Ciri and Adigalia to go and do a dangerous rescue. Yeah, really exciting. We have got a sort of James Bond villain level of bad guy, but it's quite refreshing to have the big bad being not a dark side or the Force user, just a regular evil genius mastermind type character. I enjoyed the team up again, and this was a good conclusion to the story arc. Worth buying. So book 14, The Ties That Bind, sees Qui-Gon's special friend Tal go to a planet that they'd been to before to resolve a situation, and he can't bear the thought of not being with her, and goes off to the planet to find her. Obi-Wan tags along to find there's a whole bunch of intrigue and corruption going on, and Tal has sort of ingratiated herself into one of the factions. So we've got some interesting history with the Jedi on this planet from before. Everything's gone pear-shaped since then, and there's been murders, there's more murders that happen during the course of the story, there's kidnappings and all the rest of it. And during all this, Qui-Gon is busy making goo-goo eyes at Tal, and Obi-Wan's completely oblivious to anything going on between these two. And needless to say, things come to a head when Qui-Gon expresses his true feelings to Tal, which kind of cements her fate, because obviously we've never heard of Tal from the films, and indeed she's kidnapped at the end of the book. Yeah, really, really good. This was a very strong story. I really enjoyed this one, because not only have you got the will they, won't they thing between Qui-Gon and Tal, but there's also all the crazy stuff going on the planet as well, and yeah, it's just really well done. I really enjoyed this. Booktastic. On to the next one. Book 15, The Death of Hope. At the end of book 14, there was the sudden and inevitable betrayal, leading in Tal's kidnapping, and so Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are on the clock chasing down the bad guy to rescue Tal. And this one had the feel of a online RPG because our 2 Jedi keep being forced to do some side quests. And this is full of really quite harrowing situations. I was kind of reminded of Mulan when they come across that village that had been sacked. And sort of that level of, whoa, that got dark really quick. And of course, it's not done with the revelations and twists and turns from the previous book as well. So, chock full of stuff here, really good, really enjoyed this one. And had a sort of inevitable conclusion to it that you kind of knew was coming, but it still hit when it did. Booktastic. On to the next one. Yeah, so book 16, The Call to Vengeance, sees Qui-Gon Jinn on the warpath. After what happened to Tal in the previous story, he's pretty pissed. And all that stands between him and going down the dark side is Obi-Wan Kenobi, who really didn't know what was going on between his master and Tal. So, he's obviously grieving a lost friend, but there's a lot more going on there as well. And he's also got to reform his friendship with Tal's apprentice as well, who is also grieving. And so it's a really good study in grief, and more twists and turns, more intrigue from this ongoing arc. This is the conclusion of the arc, but yeah, really, really strong storyline here. Qui-Gon really at his worst, and kind of reinforces Yoda's thing about no attachments, because things can go really badly, but then it doesn't always have to. Highly recommend, if you only read one story arc, then this 3-book story arc I think is the pinnacle really of this series, which has been really strong so far actually. Yeah, booktastic. On to the next one. I'll get out of this tree. So on to the last 2 books. So 17, The Only Witness. This is a standalone book in the series where they go to a planet to protect a witness. Basically, there's a mafia-style crime family going on, and I think the widow of one of their number is wanting to testify against the family, but is obviously fearing for her life. And so the Jedi go in to try and get her out to testify, and of course, it's not as easy as that, is it? There's more to it. She's not exactly truthful in the first place, in that the proof she totally said she had, she doesn't have yet, but there's definitely proof there, we just need to get it, sort of thing. Yeah, a really strong story, and a nice sort of continuation of a grieving Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn as they are helping this grieving widow do the right thing. So, although it is a standalone in the series, it isn't isolated from the events that have preceded it. Really enjoyed this one again, worth buying. And now, on to the last one, which is The Threat Within, book 18,
And this one had a very similar feel to The Fight for Truth, in that it's very much an episodic type story, which if you'd watch something like Stargate or Star Trek, it would be one of those, our heroes go to a planet and this is the situation, and they resolve that situation through the course of the episode. It was absolutely fine as a story. Basically, it's a planet full of work-obsessed drone-like people, and that's all it is. We live to work. Work's a thing, back to work. I think there was even a phrase like, get back to work. I think there's even a common phrase along that sort of lines. And some of the disillusioned youth are sabotaging various things of their society, kind of in rebellion really, but there are certain members of this group who are taking things too far, and our Jedi are trying to mediate what's going on. I think the leadership are blaming a neighbouring planet for these sabotages. And of course the leadership don't know it's the youth, they think it's their neighbouring planet who are jealous of their success and industriousness, and so we almost got war happening between these two planets. So the Jedi need to try and uncover the truth. Obi-Wan discovers that it's in fact the youth doing these things, and of course then how do we resolve this without it getting worse, particularly as a couple of the young who are very keen on escalating things further. I say it was okay. I think having had a really strong story arc with the last lot, and this being the final book of the series, it did feel a little extraneous, I think. It was worth reading, but all worth buying. Obviously these then go into the Jedi Quest books, which I've only got like book 5 of, so that's not going to happen anytime soon. But I was hoping for a better conclusion to the series, I suppose, particularly as it has been rather strong throughout. So okay, that was all the Star Wars Jedi Apprentice books, not counting the 2 special editions, because I've only got one of them. And they're only about 160 pages-ish each, so pretty quick to get through. But at nearly 20 of them, that was close to 2,000 pages, so that's pretty good. And despite being aimed at younger readers, these I did not find patronising at all. They really dealt with complex issues such as grief, belonging, the true victims of war, the futility of war. I certainly found the first arc with Xanatos perhaps a little by the numbers in terms of the villain. The individual stories were quite good. I did enjoy the individual stories, but I found the villain pretty standard Star Wars fare, really. And then the Deadly Hunter story arc, that was quite a good one, although again we did end up with a sort of James Bond villain-esque type character, but I really enjoyed how that played out. The Tal story arc was really the strongest one in the series, and she's getting rescued in Defenders of the Dead and then has a sort of cameo appearance in many of the subsequent books before her main arc kicks off, and that's a really strong arc. I mean, the downside was obviously we knew where it was going to go because there's no sign of her in The Phantom Menace, but I did enjoy that immensely. It was just a shame it ended on such a generic story. I mean, it was fine for what it was, but it just didn't feel particularly special as the concluding story of this particular run of books. Now, yeah, I'm really happy I read them all back to back. I'm delighted to fill in some of those gaps. The evil experiment really filled in some of those holes there. And I'd say the series is definitely worth buying, although good luck finding it. So yeah, that's my first reading vlog. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you want to see more vlogs of this type, or scream out that you don't, with a nice 21-point plan of exactly why not. But otherwise, have you read the Jedi Apprentice series? Are you more inclined to now? Comments down below, please. But as usual, if you have nothing nice to say, then please keep it to yourself. Thank you. Like, subscribe, and other YouTubey things if you want. And until next time, see you later.